This is your first and only warning. You are about to experience levels of secondhand embarrassment that are just so cringe-inducing, I feel legally obligated to give you a disclaimer. What happens when social media's most popular artist crosses paths with a traditional art critic? The answer is a public meltdown that honestly just makes me embarrassed to be an influencer. We're gonna have a really specific kind of fun, the kind you can only get by watching someone just have a complete meltdown over basically nothing. Yeah. So on the one hand, we've got Devin Rodriguez, who you may not recognize by name, but he's most known for being that guy who draws people on the subway and like shows it to them. He like does it on TikTok and YouTube Shorts. I feel like we've probably all seen his thumbnails at the very least. The guy has 33 million TikTok followers. On the other hand, we have someone who has quite a few less than 32 million followers. That would be Ben Davis, the art critic in question. He seems to work for this publication called ArtNet, where he just does his job of critiquing artwork. So you would think that as an artist and an influencer and somebody who spends a lot of time critiquing things on the internet that I might feel kind of conflicted about this issue. But let me tell you this right now. I have no conflict. This Devin Rodriguez guy sucks. This Ben Davis guy wrote one article just critiquing this guy's art exhibition, and Devin went off. Not in a cool way. But before we get into probably the most crybaby behavior I've seen in a very long time, or at least all week, let's go ahead and get into today's sponsor. I mean, what's more meta than a sponsorship and a video about influencers? Today's video is sponsored by Grammarly. When I say professional writer, what kind of jobs spring to mind? Maybe an art critic or a TV writer, you know, things like that. But if you ask me, my first thought is always gonna be YouTuber. Take my last video. Delivering info for nearly an hour straight means I have to write a page or two, or 45. So needless to say, I am a huge fan of Grammarly and its advanced AI features, which are only a click away. Grammarly helps you ideate. Your days of sitting in front of an empty document, not knowing where to start, are over. Grammarly can help you come up with ideas to kick things off. Grammarly helps you reply. Scared of your inbox? Me too. Or at least I used to be, until I started using Grammarly to summarize emails and suggest replies. Grammarly helps you revise. Looking for a fresh perspective? Grammarly can help you paraphrase, streamline, and revitalize your work instantly. To find out all of the ways Grammarly can help you improve your writing from start to finish, you can try Grammarly for free today. Sign up and download Grammarly for free at grammarly.com/Wallace10. To access extra features, you can get 20% off Grammarly Premium. All right, now let's get into the video. So here it is, the article in question. What was just so darn bad that you had to throw a temper tantrum over it? Let's find out. TikTok star Devin Rodriguez is now the most famous artist in the world. But what about his work? Underground, Rodriguez's show at UTA Artist Space, is a chance to observe the rise of influencer art by Ben Davis. So here's the funny part. I actually came across this story very organically. Usually I have to search for things that I'm interested in to make videos about, but this just popped up on my Google feed. Art is one of my interests, and so I click into a lot of articles about art. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I went into this probably the same way Devin did. I was like, oh, not this again. Not some, you know, stuffy art publication trying to come after influencers. And I just kind of felt like the headline was sort of questioning why he's famous in the first place. Devin Rodriguez is almost certainly the most famous artist in the world, at least on one level. Almost no one I know has ever heard of him, except if you say he's the painter who draws people on the subway from TikTok. Then sometimes they will light up with recognition. Honestly, that's kind of exactly where I was as well. I had never really heard his name before, but like I said, I saw his thumbnails all over the place. I mean, the guy's massive. He has just closed a solo show titled Underground, his first, and everything about it reflects exactly the strange combination of hypervisibility and invisibility. So they go on to describe how basically the agency that manages him set up this pop-up event to display his artwork. It wasn't exactly in a traditional art gallery, but it was almost like a fan meetup exhibition type thing. When I showed up for the opening back at the beginning of September, the line of fans stretched from 10th Avenue to 11th. Along with many dozens of other people, I failed to get in. The opening of Underground was a real event covered on CNN. For many, Rodriguez is both a celebrity and a role model, representing a new pathway to success. So the article then goes on to get into Rodriguez's background, which is actually pretty tied into his meltdown that comes up later. So let's just go ahead and get the talking points from from that. He was born in, quote, one of the poorest neighborhoods in the country. He was abandoned by his father. Child Protective Services removed him from his mother at an early age to live with his grandmother. So despite what was obviously a very rough start in life, it seems like this is the kind of guy who was determined not to let that get him down. He initially did graffiti, which turned into a more traditional art interest. So he went to school for it for a bit, but then he dropped out and started just submitting things to shows. And he even wound up submitting one of these to a show at the Smithsonian, which is obviously just a huge museum here. But even back then, it seems like he was pretty social media minded. Rodriguez was described as teaching his mentor how to promote his art on social media. Smash cut to 2020 when Rodriguez had the life-altering inspiration to post to the suddenly ubiquitous platform TikTok. Instead of just showing off his drawings themselves, Rodriguez filmed himself clandestinely making art on the subway, gifting strangers a drawing of themselves, and then capturing their emotional reaction. And that is pretty much this guy's shtick. Like, if you've seen one of his videos, you've seen them all. Finds some interesting looking person on the subway, seemingly very quickly knocks out a very realistic portrait of them, gives it to them, they're all shocked and surprised, everybody's happy. I personally think it's good content. I mean, posting things on the internet that are not bad is always a good thing in my opinion, and it's a positive thing. Artwork is beautiful, people getting nice things is beautiful, so overall I would say Devin Rodriguez was largely contributing a lot of positivity to the internet, and this was also positively contributing to his bank account. He hit pay dirt. Almost immediately, Rodriguez's subway vignettes were getting millions, sometimes tens of millions of views. As of now, Rodriguez has over 32 million followers on TikTok and many millions more across other platforms. It's not mentioned in this article, but he also has 3 billion views on YouTube as well, just from YouTube Shorts. So keep that in mind. This guy is huge. I can't overstate that. According to a 2021 article about him moving from the Bronx to the Lower East Side, Rodriguez's day rate for doing sponsored content can be $20,000 to $30,000. And if that was in 2021, I promise you it is significantly higher than 20K to 30K nowadays. Last November, he met President Joe Biden, who accepted a Rodriguez drawing of himself, marveling, "It looks like a photograph." So anyway, I think that's enough about this guy. We get it, right? He started off in poverty, which I personally relate to. In the first apartment I remember living in, I didn't even have a bedroom. My bed was in the hallway. And while I was very fortunate to have a support network and sort of the means to pursue social media, I am also just really grateful to social media itself. So I relate to this guy. Again, I'm coming into this article on Devin's side. I want to make that clear. But oh my gosh, he made me look like an absolute fool. Underground featured about a dozen paintings in a detailed photographic style, plus some nicely rendered charcoal drawings. All depict Rodriguez's signature theme: people riding the subway, reading or looking at their phones, or lost in thought. So the writer of this article, Ben Davis, was able to get into the exhibition after the first day, and it's pretty dope. I mean, like, they added the white tiles to actually look like the subway, along with these orange seats that are similar to the ones in his paintings. And as you can see from said paintings, the dude is talented, right? I'm not gonna sit here and knock on his artwork just because he turned out to be kind of a loser, but it's really nice stuff, personally. He knows how to find interesting looking people, and he knows how to make just anyone look interesting, which I think is a really big skill, because I do think everyone is interesting in a way. In a statement for the show titled Deeper Underground, UTA artist space manager boss Arthur Lewis waxes poetic about Rodriguez's vision. In his hands, a single brushstroke becomes an orchestra, a dance, a poignant conversation frozen in pigment. Devin's creations transport us to a realm where colors converse, shadows whisper, and emotions transcend their two-dimensional confines. His art embodies the essence of what it means to be human, to observe, to interpret, and to share. Okay, honestly, like, to be so for real right now, I don't think it's that serious. They're just they're just realistic portraits. But you know what? It's his management. His management's job is to promote him, so go off. Go off, King. Go off, Arthur Lewis. That great job. Anyway, Ben Davis gives his own take on these paintings. Well, he's an excellent technical painter. There's a reason why it would have stood out to someone like his previous mentor. But even by the standards of press release hype, Lewis is overselling it. I do totally agree with that. As mentioned, this is This is absurd. The brushstrokes are determinedly inexpressive, not a poignant conversation frozen in pigment. As for the colors, the paintings mainly look as if Rodriguez has tried to stay as close to a photographic reference as possible. Rodriguez's subject matter has pathos, subway riders lost in their own worlds, but it is somewhat conventional as well. Rodriguez was inspired by, among others, his teacher at the High School of Art and Design, the painter James Harrington, who mined strikingly identical subject matter in a slightly more painterly way. And so they link to this guy's work, and I'm like, oh, snap. Okay. Low-key, I see what they mean. Not to say that one is better or worse, but this does speak to a lot more of like a personal interpretation, in my opinion. Whereas Devin's work is definitely more like, I guess, just realistic. Honestly, like the way he uses color kind of just reminds me of an iPhone picture. Same with the perspective in his drawings as well. But I personally think that's impressive as well. I'm not really big into like saying things are better or worse when it comes to artwork, but I totally understand where Ben Davis is coming from, preferring this to this, because I do think that this is a heck of a lot more expressive and probably more befitting of that silly description that his manager gave. And despite sort of criticizing his work, he does go on to say that it has its benefits as well. So like he's describing this self-portrait he made, which is huge and really impressive looking. And he says down here he has rendered his own face at a sharper level of detail than everyone else's. A nice touch, as if a lens was focusing in on him, which that's kind of what I was saying. It looks like iPhone pictures. That's the kind of device that gives this work more articulation than the meat and potatoes photorealism of the other canvases. So as you can see, it's not just like, I'm gonna totally crap on this guy's artwork. This guy sucks. He's really giving this a fair shake, in my opinion. This is just straightforward art critic review. But speaking of that self-portrait, he goes on to say the huge hand of the man whose body's mainly cropped out at the bottom left, it's the most prominent detail, but it's a little wonky. It looks like a small rotisserie chicken. If I had this painting on my wall and had to look at that mitt every day, it would start to bug me. I do have to agree that is not the best hand I've ever seen. Hands are tricky. They are tricky. I usually wouldn't point out someone's hands not being perfect in a drawing because they're just so hard to draw. But at the same time, this is an art review, so there you have it, folks. And the author even says as much. While hands are infamously hard to paint, again, Devin Rodriguez is a talented painter. I just think it's clear, if we're honest, that it's not ultimately his painting technique that is key to what brought the big crowds to the show. And so at this point, I was kind of like, you know what? I agree. I came into this article just ready to be mad. I'm not gonna lie, but honestly, there's nothing to be mad at here, at least in my opinion. If you make an art exhibition, you probably want art critics to come and give their opinion about your paintings. Is that a hot take? It is to Devin, as you're going to see in a bit here. But yeah, I personally think that this criticism is extremely fair. And the point of art is that we're all supposed to have different opinions about it anyway. So far, no harm, no foul. Well, I guess the only foul was the rotisserie chicken hand. So Ben Davis goes on to explain how, to him, this art exhibition kind of felt like it was a little bit more about Devin than it was about the actual artwork. It says his management created, quote, a short film that played on a loop, telling Rodriguez's personal story and rise to viral mega fame via TikTok, showing both his encounters with ordinary people and the clips where he stages run-ins with the likes of Ed Sheeran or Jared Leto on the subway and draws them. I mean, I do think it's pretty safe to say that this is obviously not real. Ed Sheeran is definitely not riding the subway randomly. I also really just love the fact that in this video, Ed is looking at nothing, like just kind of his shoes. He's not even holding his phone. But yeah, this is clearly not a real interaction. I don't think it's mean of me to say that. I'm not really bursting anyone's bubble, right? The same would go for Jared Leto here. And he even says in his caption, can't believe that I just saw at Jared Leto on the subway. Yeah, maybe you just saw at Jared Leto on the subway because this was obviously put together by you and Jared Leto. Like, come on, dude, you're famous. This guy's famous as well. I like how this comment right here says, how are all these celebrities on the subway? Well, they're not. I hate to break it to you. Rodriguez himself talks about this. You have to have a good hook, a good middle story, and a good ending, and a really good incentive to watch to the end. The algorithm boosts the videos that get watched the most, and the people scrolling are given the best of the best. All I had to focus on is keeping people on the app and somehow molding my work into something that's entertainment. So I feel like even Devin is kind of in on the joke, if you will, that not all of this content is real. And Ben goes on to talk about how there are like YouTube YouTube videos just debunking this and trying to prove that he could not possibly be organically doing what he said he was doing. But Rodriguez isn't totally trying to hide it. It says he has admitted in the story about him moving to Manhattan that he, quote, gets advance permission from the person he wants to draw and asks how long they expect to be on the subway. At this point, it seems that everyone involved is basically simply collaborating on a bit of theater to make a nice viral moment. And like, he has this one video where he, quote unquote, meets Courtney Cox just randomly walking down the street and then offers to draw her. And so then in like literally 10 seconds, he just draws this perfect illustration of her. Wow. Surprise, surprise. Anyway, despite there just being an element of inauthenticity to Devin's whole shtick, Ben Davis goes on to say that it's not really that big of a deal, which I completely agree with. He says if everyone agrees to go along with this kayfabe, it is because A, it is in everyone's interest to do so, and B, Rodriguez seems like just such a genuinely nice person, someone you root for. And I really need y'all to keep this part in your mind. Please don't forget that the author of this article has called this man a nice person, because when I read this, I agreed with it as well. He just seems like a great guy. What more do you want? Someone talented, someone nice, someone who does nice things for other people, someone who makes your day brighter. It just so easily could have been left at this and everyone could have lived happily ever after. And that's pretty much where he leaves it. I mean, the article is very long. You know, if there's one thing a writer's gonna do, it's write. But he basically just wraps it up by saying what we already know. He's popular because his videos make people feel good and his art is nice. Not because it's some amazing or super expressive thing. And I just feel like that's objectively true. I didn't think there was anything wrong with this article. It wasn't even mean. Like, the most critical thing that this guy had to say was that he drew her hand kind of wonky. If that is your only real criticism out of a giant art exhibition with a bunch of these guys painting, you should be happy you kind of got off scot-free. And yes, Ben does obviously take into consideration the fact that we might not be here if not for TikTok, but he doesn't seem to hold it against this Devin Rodriguez guy at all. This is what he says. In 2023, Rodriguez is essentially in a race to develop an audience with a more than superficial interest in his actual painting faster than his social media presence is drained of goodwill through over-exploitation. I'm not totally sure, based on his exhibition, that this is a problem fully resolved, but it's a problem that is bigger than just him, and I am rooting for anyone who is trying to solve it. And that is the article. Shout out Ben Davis. I thought it was great. Called him a nice guy, said nice things about his paintings, admitted that even though these paintings aren't your style and you prefer more expressive stuff, he's still a good technical painter. In my opinion, it takes a lot to be able to say, this is not my cup of tea, but I think it's objectively well done. Criticized small things that are kind of objectively a little wonky looking, and brought up some really interesting points about social media without just totally crapping all over this guy's work just because he's different than other people who have become famous in the art space. So yeah, when I read this, I honestly just closed the tab. I was like, never mind. There was nothing to be mad at here. I was being kind of goofy by coming into this the wrong way. But whereas I read it and was like, this is clearly not a cause for alarm, our good friend Devin Rodriguez had the complete opposite experience, resulting in this follow-up. The world's most popular painter sent his followers after me because he didn't like a review of his work. Here's what I learned. The reaction from Devin Rodriguez's followers shows why developing a critical analysis of parasocial aesthetics is important. Now, remember that warning I gave at the beginning of the video? This is where it's in full effect. We are about to get so just embarrassingly cringe. I know the word cringe is overused. Cringe culture is dead. No, this is cringe culture. Furries and Minecraft YouTubers and K-pop fans, not cringe. They are just people enjoying themselves. But like giant social media influencers sending their followers after just basically random writers just because you didn't get a perfectly glowing 100% bow down, praise everything about you review. This is cringe. A little more than a week ago, I wrote a review of an art show by the artist and TikTok sensation, Devin Rodriguez, best known for live drawing subway riders. He is, by some measures, the most famous artist in the world, with many millions of social media followers. He did not like the review. It went up on a Friday. On Saturday morning, I woke up to a tidal wave of anger from Rodriguez on Instagram, tagging me across scores of posts. So Devin Rodriguez on his IG, which to be clear has millions of followers, 7.5 million to be exact, basically took to his Instagram stories and went on this just massive tirade. He was repeatedly tagging Ben on Instagram when Ben has 4,000 followers compared to Devin's 7.5 million. It's starting to seem a little lopsided. Hundreds of his followers went on the attack, swarming my Instagram. Loser, hater, pathetic, jealous, and on and on and on. There were many creative variations on kill yourself. Others said they were going to get me fired or okay, wait, sorry. That one's really funny. You're gonna get this man fired for doing his job though? Like, it's literally his job to critique the artwork. You think ArtNet, an art publication, is gonna fire an art critic for criticizing artwork? Anyway, they said they were gonna get him fired or said things like, "We are gonna start a cancellation campaign against you." A large number thought that defending Rodriguez meant calling me bald, ugly, fat, or whatever they thought could get under my skin. Most didn't seem to have actually read my article. No, let me correct that for you. None of them read that article. Like, I promise you, somebody who thinks that an art critic is gonna get fired for criticizing artwork did not have the wherewithal to read an actual art criticism article. I promise you that. A contingent went after my wife. Some women will do anything for money, one commented. That one was funny, actually. After a few days, Rodriguez ceased tagging me and the wave of hate cooled down. And so after his wave of posts, he tags him and he's like, @Benstoppable, love will always outshine being a hater. I hope I taught you that today. Everyone go follow Benstoppable. I think that's what he wants, but doesn't know how to go about it. And can I just say, I really hate the tone of this post. I actually really don't like when, just because you don't like what someone's done, you start trying to minimize their job or their talent and you just relegate them to just doing everything for clout. Like, this idea that Ben just wrote this because he wants followers is so ridiculous. I don't know how to explain this to you, Devin, but Ben has a job. He is successful. He didn't really need to write this or not need to write this in any way. You didn't make or break him. Going to your exhibition and writing about it was literally just part of his job. And I promise you, if you wanted followers online, there are shortcuts to doing that. You don't have to become the editor of an art magazine. It's like influencers, or at least ones like the self-proclaimed most followed visual artist in the world, like Devin. They really think that everyone in the entire world is just like them. And we all just want to be famous so bad. Like, we all just want millions of followers. Any interaction you have with me is based on the fact that I have clout and you don't. And I hate this energy. I really don't like it. Anyway, if you're wondering like what he actually said before that and what the tantrum was and why people were going after him, just wait, we're gonna get there. But it says, meanwhile, I also received an urgent email from UTA Artist Space. Neither Devin, who we represent, nor UTA was given a chance to respond to this very negative and one-sided article. I wrote back that I had never heard of an artist demanding to comment on a review in advance, but that if Rodriguez or UTA wanted to write a reply, we would publish it. First of all, y'all are just lying. The article was not negative or one-sided. I read the majority of it to you verbatim. I feel like I run into this attitude a lot online, actually, where people perceive criticism as inherently negative. It's not negative or detracting from people's overall happiness to discuss artwork. Not everything has to be praise. Sometimes you're not gonna like things, and that's okay. People who maybe don't like things are allowed to have discourse about those things. I feel like we really gotta get that through our head. And as for it being one-sided, I'm not even sure what that means in this context. Like, yeah, sure, he didn't ask Devin for his input, but why do you need Devin's input on your own opinion about his artwork? Where are they coming from with this? Ben goes on to say, it's not the first time that an artist has been mad at me. Only the first time that an artist with this particular type of fame has gone out of his way to unleash his fans in this way. It's also not anywhere near the worst or most important thing going on in the world, obviously. Nevertheless, I do think it raises some larger issues worth talking about. So it then goes on to include some great quotes from Devin Rodriguez, We've got Ben Stoppable is my biggest hater. He then goes on to get really mad at the opening of the article. Because remember, the opening was like, you know, Devin Rodriguez is one of the most popular artists, but no one I know has really heard of him. Well, he says, no one he knows has ever heard of me, as if the people that he knows are more important than everyone else in this world that follows me. Sorry that I'm not a part of your pretentious circle, Ben Stoppable. I promise I'm not saying this to be mean, but no one I know has heard of this guy either. I checked. I asked people, hey, do you know who Devin Rodriguez, the artist, is? And everyone was like, no. But then I'm like, oh, do you know the guy who draws people on the subway on TikTok? And everyone's like, yes. You have 33 million followers, but I don't really think that makes you as popular as you think you are. But yeah, fellas, is it pretentious to have never heard of somebody's name? Now you guys see what I mean when I say in my interviews, I never had an art show before because I always felt the gatekeeping. After everything I've done, they're still trying to gatekeep me. Now imagine how it felt when I had nothing and no one noticing me. So I'll continue to preach. If you have someone like Ben Stoppable in your life, don't ever let them diminish your shine. I still deal with it in my life today after everything. I fight for me and for you. Keep going. We got the answers. Love y'all. Laughing, crying emoji, heart emoji, prayer emoji, kissy face emoji, heart hands emoji. Devin, where is the gatekeeping? Who is gatekeeping you in this article? I am so confused right now. Now, I will say this. I don't doubt that Devin has probably faced a good deal of actual gatekeeping in the industry. Art actually is notoriously pretentious, especially when you get into museums and exhibitions and stuff like that. So I do totally believe that people would try to keep Devin out of these conversations. But that is not what Ben Davis was doing. And it's just so disingenuous to lump him in with all these people when he really treated you the same way he would have treated anybody else. This is what you want. You should want art critics to write articles about you if you're trying to be taken seriously. This is the actual opposite of gatekeeping. Like, I can't. Anyway, Ben points out the same thing. I'm arguing that traditional art circles should take the phenomenon seriously and think through what is really going on with this kind of art career. Rodriguez has a lot of cultural clout, but the fact is that most people who go to museums and art galleries or who regularly read about art haven't heard about him. There's no lie here. There's nothing gatekeepy, nothing hater here about this. It's like Devin wants everything at the same time. You want to be this social media guy who stages videos with Ed Sheeran, which no person could ever do, but then you also want to be taken kind of seriously in a way and treated the same as just your regular artist who happens to get a showing. You cannot have both of those things. The way that Ben wrote this article is about as close as you're going to get to whatever it is you're looking for. He then posts another story and he's like, okay, I'm back. And he quotes this person saying, trying to cancel someone because you are jealous of his talent and success. You are a man with an opinion, nothing more. Let that humble you some. And obviously this comment's directed to Ben. And first of all, dude, y'all got to stop using the word cancel. There was nothing cancel-y about Ben Davis's original article. He did the complete opposite and was like, yo, I don't really super vibe with this, but I see why he's here despite my criticisms. I feel like he's really working with some uncharted territory, so it's gonna be bumpy, but I'm rooting for him and he seems like a nice guy. But instead, Devin's just like, Ben Stoppable, humble yourself, my guy. Please humble yourself. You're a man with an opinion, nothing more. You're not more important than anybody else, and I hope today you realize that. The absolute irony of just one of the most self-important and out of touch with reality artists I've ever seen in my life asking somebody else to humble themselves is not lost on me. And I did not see Ben claiming to be anything more than a man with an opinion. I did not see him claiming to be more important than anybody else. But clearly you think you're more important than all these other people if you think Ben's not even allowed to criticize your artwork in the first place. The secondhand embarrassment is getting to me, y'all. It's getting to me. He goes on to say Rodriguez is acting as if he's being unfairly scrutinized when, and it lists all these things. He works with A-list celebrities, has made as much as $30,000 a day working with mega brands like Cheetos. He has all of this management and press agents. He even teaches a masterclass on realistic portrait painting. Bruh, who gatekept you? You did it. You beat the gatekeeping. Who is gonna tell this guy that he won? He you're not in the position that you're acting like you're in anymore. This is wild. Dude has PR putting him in the room with the president and he's acting like you're gatekeeping him. Someone wrote me. I should mention that I've received a lot of support too. Yeah, Ben, well, consider this video support as well, because this is just nonsense. He goes on to describe that he feels like the reason that Devin is freaking out right now is because despite getting this popular, he's managed to do it without ever actually being criticized in any meaningful way. It's all just been feel-good profiles, so that the first critical word feels like a huge crisis. That's a relatively new kind of situation for an artist to be in and worth analyzing. The gatekeepers can't stop me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9... 18 crying laughing emojis at Benstoppable. You can't stop me. Okay, but your PR team needs to stop you because this is actually embarrassing. Be stopped, Devin, for your own good. Anyway, Ben does some self-examination, I guess trying to work out what part of his article was just so mean. He says, is it mean to point out how fake the content is? If there's no criticism of it, here's what I think will happen. All the marketing companies and PR people looking to piggyback on Rodriguez's popularity will stuff his feed with more and more cringe celebrity content and half-baked promo ideas until his social media presence is bled dry of whatever charm it has. And I agree with that. It's not the end of the world that you're faking videos, but if we're not even really allowed to point out the obvious fakes, then what exactly is the point of any of this content at all? What are we following, I guess? And meanwhile, a lot of fans coming across art through his channel will get a totally confused idea of how contemporary art celebrity works, which brings me to the last and most important answer to the question of why I think it's worth writing about Rodriguez seriously. Because he is a role model for a ton of young artists, and they deserve an actual assessment of what is going on. Again, we go back to this idea of wanting to have it all. You can't just create a bunch of fake content that is obviously fake, but then also demand for your content to be taken seriously as real. Like, you cannot have it all. It's really clear to me that this guy is, like, in his brain, more influencer than artist, because this is some serious influencer stuff. What if he was your son? Someone posted at me angrily. This comment is emblematic. It's not the kind of thing one normally says about an artist getting a critical review, unless the criticism is extremely over the top and disproportionate to the status of the artist in question. Generally, the point of presenting an art show in public is to see if it can hold the attention of people who don't directly know you. Also, there's nothing in that article that would have even been mean to say to your son, thus proving once again that the people criticizing him absolutely did not in any way, shape, or form read the darn article. His followers feel like I am attacking a person they like, not judging artworks or analyzing a media phenomenon. I think that explains the character of the reaction, which has a level of raw personal anger completely out of joint with what I wrote in my article. He then goes on to talk about parasocial relationships, which are definitely the culprit here. But can I also take a second to point out how level-headed and rational Ben Davis is being about all of this? I promise you that if I wrote some sort of review of your work and you tried to come for me the way Devin Rodriguez did, let's just say my response would not be so gracious. Ben Davis seems like a really good sport here. Anyway, he wraps it up by saying, all the same, Devin Rodriguez's art agents and PR handlers might gently tell him that if one of the things you are selling is likability and good vibes, cheering on this kind of vicious reaction every time you get a review you don't like is probably not a sustainable career path. Even this, which is just so politely worded, is honestly kind of scathing in a way. You just reduce this entire guy into like a sentence. Your vibes are totally out of whack with what you're trying to sell to us. Clearly, you're not just this feel-good guy. There seems to be massive, I don't know if it's insecurity or just an ego problem or an ego problem caused by insecurity, but whatever it is, you're not very at peace with the idea that people can have differing opinions about you. And that is the last quality you want to have as an artist. I experienced the same thing. I mean, I know a lot of people might not consider YouTube videos to be art, but I don't care about a lot of people. I definitely do. I put a lot of craft into these things. There are so many people, just hundreds of thousands of people who like my videos. Why do I need to focus on a few people who maybe have criticisms for me when there's just so much good to focus on? Is it not enough to have 7.5 million people who like your artwork? Was it not enough to have 33 million followers on TikTok who like your stuff? There can't just be one guy who publishes an article saying that you drew a hand weird. You got to go on a meltdown and start just this hate wave by repeatedly tagging him with your giant Instagram account. Honestly, I felt better before I knew what kind of guy this Devin Rodriguez guy was. Yeah, that was my take on it. I think I was pretty darn clear. But do you have a similar take? Let me know if you're sort of on the same page. Let me know if you're not on the same page. Maybe I'm totally wrong about something and I just missed something. But I doubt it. But also remember that if you disagree with me even a little bit, then you're actually gatekeeping and just a hater. Anyway, thank you for the support. Thank you for watching if you happen to make it this far. And as always, I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye.